The morning sun rose softly over Atlanta, painting the sky in warm orange and pink. The airport was alive with the usual rush. People dragging suitcases, announcements echoing through the halls, and the smell of coffee filling the air. Among the crowd walked Alicia Roberts, calm and graceful, dressed in a navy blue suit that matched her confident but gentle personality. She wasn't loud or flashy. She moved with quiet authority, the kind that didn't need attention to be felt. Alicia was the kind of woman people underestimated at first glance. At 38, she had built one of the top tech companies in the country, SkyTech Solutions. She was a self-made CEO respected in the business world, known for her intelligence, fairness, and strength. But at that airport, no one knew her name. To most people there, she was just another passenger trying to catch a flight. Her assistant had called earlier that morning, reminding her about the meeting in New York. It was an important day. She was supposed to sign a new partnership deal that could take her company to the next level. Still, Alicia liked to travel quietly. She didn't have a private jet. She preferred to fly commercial. She believed in staying grounded, remembering where she came from. As she walked through the airport, she smiled politely at the staff and checked her ticket. First class, seat 2A. She had earned that comfort through hard work, long nights, and countless sacrifices. It wasn't about luxury. It was about respect, for herself and her journey. She stopped at a cafe near her gate to grab a cup of tea. A few people passed her, some glancing at her simple outfit, maybe wondering what she did for a living. One woman in line asked, "Headed to New York for business?" Alicia smiled. "Yes, always business." They laughed politely, but Alicia didn't reveal much. She never liked showing off her success. To her, humility was more powerful than any title. After finishing her tea, she walked to the boarding gate. Her flight number glowed on the screen. Flight 682, Atlanta to New York, boarding in 15 minutes. She took a seat near the window and checked her phone. There were dozens of unread emails, but one message from her assistant made her smile. "Good luck, boss. You've got this, one as always." Alicia typed back, "Thank you, Lily. See you at the office after the meeting." She leaned back in her chair, watching planes take off through the glass. She thought about how far she had come. Years ago, she couldn't even afford a plane ticket. She used to take the bus for hours just to attend business conferences. People had doubted her, ignored her ideas, and told her she didn't belong in boardrooms filled with men in suits. But she never let that stop her. She had faced every obstacle with the same quiet fire she carried now. When the announcement for boarding came, she stood up, grabbed her bag, and joined the line for first class. She waited patiently, scrolling through her phone, unaware that this flight would become one of the most unforgettable moments of her life. The line moved slowly. A few business travelers chatted loudly about stocks and company mergers. One man bragged about his promotion, his laughter echoing through the terminal. Alicia smiled faintly, not out of amusement, but because she remembered the days when she wanted so badly to be taken seriously in those same conversations. The gate agent began scanning tickets. Alicia stepped forward, handed over her passport and boarding pass, and gave a polite smile. "Good morning," she said warmly. But the woman at the gate didn't smile back. She looked at the ticket, then at Alicia, her eyes scanning her from head to toe. Her tone was polite on the surface, but carried a hint of disbelief. "Ma'am, are you sure this is your ticket?" Alicia blinked, confused but calm. "Yes, it's my ticket. First class, seat 2A. The agent frowned slightly as if something didn't add up. "Just a moment, please," she said, turning to her co-worker. The two whispered quietly, glancing at Alicia as if she had done something wrong. Passengers in line began to look too, curious about the delay. Alicia felt that familiar sting, the one that came when people doubted her, not because of what she did, but because of what she looked like. But she didn't let it show. She straightened her shoulders and waited patiently. After a moment, the agent turned back. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there seems to be an issue with this ticket. It says first class, but maybe it was upgraded by mistake?" Alicia's calm voice stayed steady. "No mistake. I booked it myself." The agent sighed and glanced at the man behind her in line, a white businessman in a sharp suit. "Sir, are you first class?" He nodded confidently. "Yes." "Please go ahead," she said, waving him through without hesitation. Alicia watched silently as the man passed by. The agent then looked back at her, still unsure. "Ma'am, please step aside for a moment." Her words were polite, but her tone wasn't. Alicia stepped aside quietly, her heart heavy but her face composed. She wasn't angry, just disappointed. She knew this feeling too well. The world had taught her to stay calm when faced with unfairness. Still, the sting of disrespect never truly went away. As she stood there, people continued to board. Some looked at her with sympathy, others with judgment. One flight attendant walked by, gave her a quick glance, and whispered something to the gate agent. Both laughed softly. That's when Alicia exhaled slowly and smiled to herself. "You have no idea who you're talking to," she thought silently. She took out her phone and checked the time. Her meeting in New York was still hours away, plenty of time for the truth to unfold. At that moment, she didn't raise her voice or demand attention. She simply waited, calm, patient, but quietly powerful, because deep down she knew something they didn't. Real power doesn't need to shout, it just needs the right moment to speak, and that moment was coming very soon. The line at the gate kept moving, but Alicia was still standing there, watching passenger after passenger board while the gate agent avoided her eyes. The air around her felt heavy, not because of the crowd or noise, but because of the quiet insult hanging in the air. People were boarding the flight she had paid for, sitting in the seats she had rightfully earned while she stood aside like she didn't belong there. The gate agent, a woman named Kelly, finally looked up, pretending to sound polite. "Ma'am, as I mentioned earlier, there seems to be a system error. Your name isn't showing in the first-class list." Alicia frowned slightly. "But I received the confirmation email this morning. My ticket clearly says first class, seat 2A. She handed over her phone with the digital receipt. Kelly barely glanced at it. "Yes, I see that. But maybe the airline accidentally upgraded you. Sometimes this happens with economy passengers." Her tone was casual, careless, as if Alicia had done something wrong by expecting what she paid for. Alicia kept her composure. "I didn't get an upgrade. I paid full price." Behind her, a man sighed loudly. "Can you hurry it up? Some of us have places to be." Kelly smiled sweetly at him and said, "Of course, sir, right this way." Then turned to Alicia again, her expression hardening. "Please step aside, ma'am. We'll sort this out later." Alicia's lips tightened slightly. "Later? My flight leaves in 10 minutes. "Then maybe you should have arrived earlier," Kelly said coldly. A small silence fell. A few people in line shifted awkwardly. One woman whispered under her breath, "That's not right." Alicia looked around. Some passengers avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice. Others stared with quiet curiosity, but Alicia didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "Can I please speak to your supervisor?" Kelly rolled her eyes. "He's busy, ma'am, but like I said, we'll handle this after boarding." Alicia took a slow breath, her patience wearing thin, but her tone still calm. "With all due respect, I will not move until this is resolved. I paid for my seat, I have proof, and I expect to be treated fairly." Kelly crossed her arms, clearly annoyed. "Ma'am, please don't make a scene. This is an airport, not a courtroom." The words cut sharper than a shout. For a brief second, Alicia's chest tightened. She could have exploded. She had every right to. But she didn't. She had learned long ago that power didn't come from loudness. It came from control. "Make a scene?" Alicia repeated quietly. "No, I'm just asking for respect." But Kelly had already turned away to help another passenger, a tall businessman in an expensive suit. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Wallace," she said cheerfully, handing him his boarding pass. "Enjoy your flight in first class." Alicia watched the man walk past her without a glance. She noticed how quickly Kelly's tone changed, warm and professional for him, cold and dismissive for her. It wasn't about the ticket. It was about perception. Alicia took a small step back, not out of defeat, but to think. Years of running a company had taught her something. Sometimes silence was the strongest response, so she stood quietly, pulling out her phone and opening her email again. Her fingers moved swiftly as she searched for something important. A few rows away, a young couple was watching the situation unfold. The woman whispered, "That's Alicia Roberts, isn't it? The CEO of SkyTech?" The man frowned. "Are you sure?" "I saw her on the cover of Business Weekly last month," she said. "She gave that speech about equality in the workplace." Alicia didn't notice them. She was focused. She found the email, the one from Skyjet Airlines, a corporate partnership division, confirming her company's ongoing investment in the airline's new technology systems. Ironically, her company was responsible for upgrading their customer service software. As she stared at the message, a quiet smile touched her lips. The irony wasn't lost on her. The airline that used her technology to treat customers better was now treating her like she didn't belong. Kelly called again. "Final boarding for Flight 682 to New York." She gave Alicia a tight smile. "Sorry, ma'am, but since we couldn't verify your seat, we'll have to place you in economy for now." Alicia's heart sank. "Economy?" she repeated softly. "It's either that or the next flight," Kelly said with a fake smile. "Your choice." Alicia looked at the line. Almost everyone was on board now. The businessman who had entered earlier was sipping champagne through the glass window in first class. The clock was ticking. But instead of arguing, Alicia simply said, "No problem," and reached into her purse. She took out her phone again, scrolled through her contacts, and pressed call. Her tone was still calm when she said, "Yes, it's me. I need to report an issue immediately. I'm at the boarding gate for Flight 682. Kelly gave her a confused look. "Ma'am, please hang up." But Alicia raised her hand gently. "Don't worry," she said softly, her tone almost kind. "You'll find out soon." Something in her voice made Kelly pause. There was confidence there, not the kind that shouted, but the kind that warned. Alicia ended the call and turned her eyes toward the boarding door. The flight attendant waiting inside looked uneasy, as if she could sense the tension. "Ma'am, are you boarding or not?" Kelly asked sharply. Alicia smiled politely. "Oh, I'll be boarding in just a moment, but I think you might want to check your phone first." Kelly frowned, confused, until her walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Gate B7, this is the main office. Is a Ms. Alicia Roberts at your gate?" Kelly's face went pale. Yes, sir. She's here." "Do not close that gate," the voice said firmly. "We'll be there in 5 minutes." Alicia simply stepped aside, sipping her tea calmly as every eye in the terminal turned toward her. In less than 5 minutes, everything would change. The woman they refused to seat in first class wasn't just another passenger. She was the CEO whose company helped build the systems that ran their airline. And soon, the crew would realize they had made the biggest mistake of their careers. The terminal grew quiet as the message echoed through Kelly's walkie-talkie. Her fake smile disappeared. A small tremor flickered across her face, the kind people get when they suddenly realize they might have made a very big mistake. But instead of apologizing, she straightened her uniform and forced a laugh. "Must be some misunderstanding," she muttered, pretending not to care. "Corporate loves to overreact." Alicia didn't respond. She just kept her eyes calm, her posture firm, holding her phone loosely in her hand. There was no anger in her face, only silence. And somehow, that silence made Kelly even more nervous. A few passengers were still waiting nearby, whispering to each other. "What's going on?" one man asked. "Why are they calling corporate for her?" The young woman who had recognized Alicia earlier leaned in. "That's Alicia Roberts," she whispered. "The tech CEO. I'm telling you, I've seen her interviews." The man's eyes widened. "Wait, the one whose company just partnered with Skyjet Airlines?" "Exactly," she said, nodding. Meanwhile, inside the gate, the other flight attendant, a young woman named Melissa, came out to see what the delay was about. "Kelly, are we closing the gate or what?" she asked, clearly impatient. Kelly waved her off. Just dealing with a passenger who thinks she belongs in first class. Melissa laughed quietly. Oh, one of those? The two exchanged a smirk, the kind that said, we know the type. They weren't whispering either, loud enough for everyone to hear. Alicia heard every word. She didn't react, though her heart ached a little. Not because she was humiliated, but because it was so casual, like disrespect was normal to them. She took a breath, straightened her jacket, and said softly, I do belong in first class. I have the ticket, the receipt, and the right to be treated with dignity. Melissa raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, please, we don't have time for drama. Maybe you misunderstood your booking. Kelly added, Look, we're not trying to offend you. It's just, we have policies and sometimes people try to sneak upgrades. Alicia tilted her head slightly. You're accusing me of lying? Kelly shrugged. Not accusing, just saying mistakes happen. The words stung. Not because of what was said, but because of how it was said. The tone, the arrogance, the way they looked her up and down like she didn't fit the image of someone who could afford a first-class seat. Inside, Alicia felt the same anger she'd felt years ago when people underestimated her business ideas because she was a black woman, when investors ignored her voice, when someone once told her, you don't look like a CEO. But this time, she wasn't that struggling dreamer anymore. She was power, calm, collected, and untouchable. So she smiled, a small, knowing smile that made both attendants slightly uncomfortable. It's funny, she said softly, how you assume so much without knowing anything. Before they could answer, a tall man in a gray suit appeared behind the counter. Mr. Reynolds, the regional operations manager. His face was tense. Who here is Miss Alicia Roberts? Alicia turned slowly, her voice composed. That would be me. He blinked, clearly shocked to see her in person. Ma'am, I'm so sorry for this. Please come with me. Kelly's jaw dropped. Wait, you know her? Reynolds didn't even look at her. She's one of Skyjet's corporate partners. Her company designs our flight data systems. You just refused her seat. Melissa's mouth fell open. Wait. What? Kelly stammered. We didn't know. Alicia interrupted gently. You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with respect. The sentence landed like a thunderclap. The nearby passengers clapped quietly, some nodding in agreement. Reynolds turned to Kelly, his tone sharp now. Go inside and get the captain and tell the crew to wait. No one's closing this flight until I say so. Kelly hurried away, her face pale. Reynolds turned back to Alicia. Please accept my apologies, Ms. Roberts. We'll get you settled immediately. Your seat is ready, and the captain would like to personally welcome you aboard. Alicia gave a polite nod. Thank you. I appreciate that. As she walked toward the gate, the other passengers stepped aside, some whispering words of support. Good for her. She handled that like a queen. That's how you do it when with class. Melissa tried to step forward. Ma'am, if you'd like, I can help you with your bag. Alicia stopped and turned slightly, her voice calm but cutting. No, thank you. I can handle it myself. Her words were gentle, but the message was clear. I don't need your help now that you've realized who I am. As Alicia walked down the jet bridge, her heels clicking softly on the floor, her phone buzzed again. A message from her assistant popped up. Skyjet just called. The CEO wants to apologize personally. What happened? Alicia typed back with a faint smile. A lesson happened. When she reached her seat in first class, the captain himself came to greet her. Ms. Roberts, it's an honor to have you on board. We're truly sorry for the incident. Please let us know if you need anything. Alicia nodded kindly. Thank you, Captain. I just hope your crew learns from this. He bowed slightly. They will, ma'am. I promise. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Alicia looked out the window. The city below shimmered beneath the morning sun. She thought about the irony. How quickly people judged others by what they saw, not who they were. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand revenge. She simply waited for truth to reveal itself. And it did. beautifully. The same crew that dismissed her 5 minutes ago would soon be facing the consequences of their arrogance, because sometimes justice doesn't shout. It just walks in quietly, and everyone feels it. The plane was boarding, the aisle buzzing with quiet chatter and the soft shuffle of passengers finding their seats. But in the middle of that calm, the tension still lingered in the air. The crew tried to act normal, but everyone, even the pilots, knew something serious had happened at the gate. Alicia Roberts sat in her seat, first class, seat 2A, exactly where she belonged, but her face wasn't angry. It was unreadable. She sat straight, hands folded, eyes focused ahead. Anyone looking at her would think she was just another executive ready for takeoff. No one could guess that a storm was forming, not of rage, but of quiet power. The captain had already come to apologize personally. Passengers in first class whispered about what had happened. Some had seen the scene at the gate. Others had already read about it online. Someone had tweeted the moment the airline manager rushed to fix the mistake. The story was spreading faster than the flight crew could breathe. Alicia reached into her bag and took out her phone. She opened an app labeled Skylink Corporate Access, an internal system for high-level airline partners. Her company, SkyTech, was the very reason that app existed. She had personally helped develop it 2 years ago when her company became one of Skyjet Airlines' main technology providers. She tapped a few buttons and entered her secure ID. The system opened with a small chime. "Welcome, Ms. Roberts. Access granted, level executive." Her fingers moved slowly but precisely. She didn't want to ruin anyone's career. She wanted to fix a system that allowed arrogance to thrive. She composed a short message, her tone professional and calm. Incident reported on Flight 682, involving crew misconduct toward a verified first-class passenger. Recommend immediate review of ground staff behavior. Evidence available. A. Roberts. Then she hit send. Across the country, in the Skyjet Airlines headquarters in New York, an alert appeared on the computer of Daniel Walker, the airline's senior operations director. He froze when he saw the sender's name. "Alicia Roberts?" he muttered aloud. "That Alicia Roberts?" He knew exactly who she was. Not just a partner, but a key investor. Her company handled the airline's passenger management software, the same system that the crew had used to verify her seat. If that software was questioned publicly, the airline's reputation could crumble overnight. Without wasting a second, he picked up his phone. Back on the plane, Alicia turned her phone to silent and closed her eyes for a moment. The engines were starting to hum. But her mind wasn't on the flight. It was on the principle. In her years as a CEO, she had learned one rule. Power means responsibility. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. The flight attendants, including Kelly and Melissa, walked past her aisle, their smiles tight, their eyes full of discomfort. Every time they glanced at her, they quickly looked away. Kelly whispered to Melissa near the galley, "Why is she acting so calm? She could have yelled, but she didn't. It's, creepy." Melissa shook her head. "You think she's serious about reporting us?" Kelly sighed. "I don't know, but that manager looked terrified. And if she really works with the airline, we're screwed." Before Melissa could answer, the intercom beeped softly, and a voice came through, calm but firm. "Attention, Flight 682 crew. Please remain at your positions. This is Operations Command. We need to confirm a matter before departure." Every attendant froze. Kelly's heart dropped. She glanced at Alicia, who sat quietly reading a magazine, the faintest smile on her lips. Moments later, the captain's door opened. "What's going on?" he asked. The co-pilot handed him a message on a small screen. His eyes widened as he read. "Oh no." Within seconds, the captain approached Alicia. "Ms. Roberts," he said politely, "we've just received instructions from corporate. They'd like to verify a few details with you before we take off." Alicia looked up, her voice calm. "Of course." He handed her a tablet. On the screen was a video call from Daniel Walker, the airline's senior director. "Ms. Roberts, he said immediately, his tone respectful. "I want to personally apologize for what you experienced today. We are reviewing everything right now. Please know this behavior is unacceptable and does not reflect our company's values." Alicia gave a small nod. "Thank you, Mr. Walker. I appreciate your quick response." He continued, nervous but sincere. "Our HR and training departments have been notified. The crew involved will be suspended pending review. You have my word this won't happen again." "Good," Alicia said softly, "because it shouldn't happen to anyone, not just me." Her words hung in the air, powerful and true. The captain stood respectfully to the side. The other passengers were silent now, pretending to look away but clearly listening. Mr. Walker hesitated, then said, "Ms. Roberts, we'd like to offer a public statement of apology, and of course a refund for your experience." Alicia smiled faintly. "No need for that. Use that money to train your staff better." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" She looked straight at the camera. "You don't fix disrespect with money. You fix it with education and empathy. That's what I expect to see." There was a pause, then a slow nod. "Yes, ma'am. You have my word." The call ended. The captain gave her a respectful bow and returned to the cockpit. Kelly and Melissa stood frozen near the galley, their faces pale. The rest of the flight crew whispered quietly, unsure what to say. Alicia turned her gaze toward them, not with hatred but with quiet disappointment. "You never know who you're talking to," she said softly, just loud enough for them to hear. "But kindness doesn't cost you anything. Remember that." The two attendants looked down, speechless. Minutes later, the plane finally began to move, rolling slowly onto the runway. The world outside was bathed in golden morning light, calm and endless, just like Alicia's strength. As the engines roared, she leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She wasn't proud of what had happened, but she knew it mattered. Not for revenge, but for every person who had ever been looked down on because someone thought they weren't enough. Somewhere high above the clouds, Alicia smiled faintly. Change had started, not with anger but with grace. And back at corporate headquarters, the airline executives were learning one unforgettable lesson. Never mistake quiet for weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of power getting ready to speak. The flight from Atlanta to New York was unusually silent. Even though the engines hummed steadily and the seatbelt lights glowed softly, there was an unspoken tension in the air. The crew moved quietly through the aisles, avoiding eye contact with Alicia. Every passenger seemed to know something big had just happened, even if they did not know all the details. Alicia sat calmly in her seat, sipping tea the captain himself had offered her. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, soft clouds glowing gold under the rising sun. It was peaceful up there, far above the noise of people's judgments. But on the ground, the story was spreading like wildfire. By the time the plane was halfway to New York, social media was buzzing. Someone had recognized Alicia during boarding, a business student who followed her on LinkedIn. That student had posted a short clip of the argument at the gate, along with the caption, "They refused a black woman her first-class seat. Turns out, she's the CEO of one of their biggest partner companies. Alicia Roberts, Krang Skyjet story, Jam power and grace." Within minutes, the post exploded. Comments poured in. Karma in real time. She handled that like a boss. This is why you treat everyone with respect. By the time the plane touched down in New York, millions of people had seen the video. News outlets were already calling it the first-class refusal scandal. When the plane landed, the flight crew lined up near the exit door, waiting nervously as passengers disembarked. Some smiled awkwardly at Alicia. Others whispered quiet, "Thank yous." A woman stopped beside her seat and said softly, "You didn't just stand up for yourself, ma'am, you stood up for all of us." Alicia smiled warmly. "We all deserve respect," she said. "Every single one of us." When she finally stepped off the plane, she was met by a group of executives in black suits waiting by the gate. The same Daniel Walker, the senior director from corporate headquarters, stood at the front, looking uneasy, but determined. "Ms. Roberts," he began, his tone full of sincerity. I'm here to personally escort you to our office. The CEO would like to.
Days passed after the meeting in New York, but the story refused to fade away. What had started as a single moment of disrespect at an airport had turned into a national conversation. News channels, podcasts, and online platforms were all talking about one woman, Alicia Roberts, the black woman CEO who stayed calm in the face of arrogance and turned humiliation into reform. The video clip from the airport had gone viral everywhere. It was replayed on morning shows, analyzed by journalists, and praised by motivational speakers. People admired not just the twist, that she was a CEO, but the way she handled everything. She didn't shout, didn't insult, didn't threaten. She let truth speak for itself. At Skyjet Airlines' headquarters, the ripple effects were serious. The company's board had ordered a full investigation into the behavior of the flight crew and gate staff. HR officials interviewed witnesses, reviewed footage, and compiled reports. The findings were clear. The staff had acted unprofessionally, showing implicit bias and verbal disrespect toward a paying customer. The incident, the report said, had damaged the airline's public image and violated its code of ethics. The consequences began quietly, like dominoes falling one by one. At the Atlanta airport, the gate agent Kelly sat in a small conference room across from two HR officers. Her uniform looked suddenly too stiff, her confident smile gone. She fidgeted with her hands, her voice breaking. "I swear, I didn't mean to offend her," she said quickly. "I just thought there was a mistake." The HR officer looked at her calmly. "We reviewed the footage, Kelly. You didn't just question the ticket. You laughed at her, rolled your eyes, and made inappropriate remarks. That's not a mistake. That's misconduct." Kelly's face fell. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Across the hall, Melissa, the flight attendant, faced a similar meeting. She sat still, biting her lip, as her supervisor read the report aloud. "You referred to Ms. Roberts as one of those passengers. Do you remember saying that?" Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, but I didn't mean it like that." The supervisor sighed. "Intent doesn't erase impact. You work in customer service. Your job is to treat everyone with respect. You failed that." Both women were suspended indefinitely, one for disciplinary review, the other for termination. Meanwhile, Daniel Walker, the senior operations director who had spoken to Alicia during the flight, received a promotion recommendation from the board for his swift and professional response under crisis. Even in chaos, he had handled things with integrity. But the biggest shift wasn't in punishment. It was in transformation. Skyjet Airlines officially announced the launch of Operation Respect, the new employee training program created in collaboration with SkyTech Solutions, Alessia's company. It wasn't just a formality. It became a mandatory system-wide policy. Every single employee, from the CEO to baggage handlers, had to complete the course. The program used virtual simulations where staff interacted with digital passengers from different races, genders, and backgrounds. The training taught empathy, patience, and professionalism, lessons the world often forgot. At first, employees groaned about it, but slowly the results spoke for themselves. Customers noticed the change. The company's reputation began to rebuild, and people couldn't stop talking about how one woman's grace changed an entire airline. Alicia didn't brag. She didn't post or speak publicly for attention, but she received letters, thousands of them, from young women, business professionals, and even airline staff who thanked her for inspiring them. One letter stood out. It came from a flight attendant named Nina, who wrote, "Ms. Roberts, I was trained through your Operation Respect program last month. It changed the way I treat people. I didn't realize how often small words or attitudes can hurt others. You didn't just change the airline, you changed us." When Alicia read that letter, she smiled quietly. That was the real victory. Not the headlines, not the praise, the change. At the next Skyjet corporate conference, the company's CEO, Richard Ellis, invited Alicia as the keynote speaker. The auditorium was full of hundreds of employees, many of whom had watched her story unfold from afar. As she walked on stage, the room erupted in applause. But Alicia raised her hand gently. "Thank you," she said softly, "but this isn't about me. This is about all of us learning to be better." She paused for a moment, scanning the audience. That day at the airport wasn't about a seat. It was about something deeper: respect, dignity, humanity. Those things should never depend on someone's title, skin color, or appearance. They should be automatic. People nodded quietly. Some even had tears in their eyes. Alicia continued, "When you choose kindness, you represent not just your company, but your character. You'll never regret treating someone with respect, but you will regret the moment you didn't." The audience gave her a standing ovation, not because she was powerful, but because she was right. Later that night, as Alicia left the conference, she stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city lights glowed in the distance, and she took a deep breath, feeling peace wash over her. Her assistant walked beside her. "Ms. Roberts, the press wants a statement about today's speech. Should I schedule something?" Alicia smiled faintly. "No need. Let the story speak for itself." She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Mom would be proud." That night she went home, not as a CEO, not as a symbol, but as a woman who had done something simple, turned pain into purpose. And somewhere in an airport thousands of miles away, a new flight attendant smiled at a passenger boarding a plane and said sincerely, "Welcome aboard, sir. I hope you have a wonderful flight." The world had changed. Quietly, respectfully, beautifully.
Months passed since the incident that changed everything. Seasons shifted and so did people. The world slowly forgot the drama of that viral video, but it never forgot the lesson behind it. For Alicia Roberts, life moved on quietly, but differently. Her company, SkyTech Solutions, was busier than ever, now partnering with several airlines to roll out the Operation Respect program. It had become more than just corporate training. It was a movement, a change born from one woman's calm resistance and unshakable belief that respect should never depend on what someone looks like. Every morning, Alicia still kept her same routine. She woke early, drank her tea by the window, and watched the sunrise touch the city skyline. To the outside world, she was the powerful CEO who turned humiliation into reform. But to herself, she was simply a woman who had refused to be small in the face of arrogance. One morning, her assistant, Lily, walked into her office with a bright smile. "You've got mail again," she said, handing over a small stack of letters. Mostly from students, and a few from Skyjet employees. Alicia smiled. "Let's read a few." She opened one. The handwriting was uneven, almost childlike. It was from a young girl named Tiana, age 12. "Dear Ms. Roberts, my mom showed me your story. She said you didn't shout, but you still won. I want to be like that one day. I want to be strong and calm too. Love, Tiana." Alicia's eyes softened. She set the letter down gently. "That," she said quietly, "is what matters most." Lily smiled. "You've inspired more people than you'll ever know." But Alicia just shook her head. "No, Lily, I didn't inspire them. I reminded them what they already had. power, dignity, and choice. That afternoon, she was invited to speak at a leadership conference in Washington, D.C. The topic was Grace Under Pressure, the New Definition of Strength. The hall was filled with CEOs, politicians, students, and everyday people who had come to hear her speak. As she walked onto the stage, the audience rose in applause. The spotlight glowed softly against her face, but Alicia didn't bask in it. She looked out at the crowd with warmth, not pride. When the room settled, she began in her gentle, steady tone. Months ago, I was refused a first-class seat I had paid for. At that moment, I had a choice: to react with anger or respond with composure. I chose the second. She paused, her eyes sweeping across the room. Not because I wasn't hurt, not because I wasn't angry, but because real power doesn't need to scream to be heard. The audience listened in silence. Alicia continued, "That day, I learned something important. The world still judges people by what they see, not who they are. But every time we respond with grace instead of rage, we chip away at that ignorance. Slowly, quietly, but permanently." Her voice grew softer, but somehow even stronger. "And maybe the next time someone sees a woman like me, they'll remember, respect is not optional." The audience erupted into applause. Some people stood, others wiped away tears. After her speech, reporters crowded around, eager for quotes. But Alicia kept her words simple. "Don't make me the story," she said. "Make the lesson the story." That night, as she left the conference, her driver stopped at a red light. Outside, on a billboard overlooking the city, was an airline advertisement that read, "Respect takes flight, inspired by Operation Respect." Alicia smiled softly, shaking her head. "Funny," she murmured, "how life comes full circle." The driver glanced in the mirror. "Ma'am, you changed a lot of people." She looked out at the glowing city lights. "No," she said with a small laugh. "They changed themselves. I just gave them a reason." The car drove on through the quiet streets. The city was alive, full of people rushing, dreaming, building, and learning. Somewhere, a young woman boarded a plane for her first job interview. Somewhere, a flight attendant smiled sincerely at a nervous passenger. And somewhere, a little girl named Tiana was writing her own story, inspired by a woman she'd never met. Back home later that night, Alicia sat on her balcony looking at the stars. Her phone buzzed with another notification, a message from Skyjet's CEO, Richard Ellis. "Alicia, I wanted you to know that Operation Respect has now been adopted by 2 more airlines. You've changed an industry. Thank you." She smiled at the message, then put the phone down. The stars above twinkled quietly, like small reminders of hope. In the stillness of that moment, she whispered to herself, "Power isn't about being in control. It's about staying kind when you could choose otherwise." The night breeze was gentle, wrapping around her like peace. The world had learned from her, not just how to lead, but how to live. Her legacy wasn't written in headlines or awards. It was written in changed hearts, in better workplaces, in strangers treating each other with kindness. That was her victory. And as the city lights shimmered below her, Alicia Roberts, the woman who was once refused a seat, smiled, knowing she had built something far greater than success. She had built respect.